Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Russell Jackman, Buddy Sotelo, here with my lifelong friend, and man, I am so proud to have on the show finally, and that is the man known as the Bot Whisperer. Yes, my pal.
Where?
Yeah, exactly.
Where?
Peter Abrahamson. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I've done about almost 170 shows, and this is one of the most special shows for me to finally have you on. I've been saying to my brother, we need to get Peter on the show one of these days. And so this week was the finale of the show Battlebots. And I thought this would be a perfect time to have Pete on also because everybody is split the scene for Memorial Day weekend, so I couldn't find anybody else.
Because I'm at home.
Yes,
Eating
exactly.
The dog and the cat.
Peter and I go back all the way to, I think I knew you when I was about 14. I think I was 14.
We met at Del Mar.
Yeah. So I think I met you when I was 14. You know, you had moved into the area. Was that the case, or you were?
I had moved all about and finally come back to Tiburon, and then was going to Del Mar, and that's where I met Greg, and then through Greg met Owen, and then you. Yes,
and we just hit it off because you were such a huge Star Wars fan at the time, and Legos and G.I. Joe,
D&D,
and all of that
stop motion.
Stuff. Yeah, oh yeah. I wish I had those stop motion films still. They were one sad note was that my father died 2 years ago, and I had a chance to go back home because underneath the house I had stashed my Atari, all my Dynamite magazines, my Dynamite magazines, all my G.I. Joe stuff that we acquired, all my Micronauts stuff, all my Star Wars stuff. Yeah, all of that was under the house because I figured my dad hooked up with this really evil girlfriend who hated my guts, and there was a huge flood in 2014 and 2016, and it flooded the entire basement. All that stuff was destroyed, so it's gone. It's gone. It's all my Atari stuff is gone. Yeah, it broke my heart. And there was a lot of stuff that you and I had, like a lot of the stop motion stuff that you and I worked on, and the films and all that stuff. They were all in there, and they all got trashed. It was a total sewage leak. So we only have our memories, and we have our times together. But yeah, no, the Micronauts, that was a big thing. You and I loved.
Oh, I had tons of Micronauts. Those were the best.
They were
Space Glider with his backpack that flipped out, and a Croyer. Like, I loved those. Those were
Croyer
awesome
was the big guy. The Croyer was
he had the sort of the cool helmet with sort of the panels on there, and he had a backpack that had two like spinning shields that went on there, and his feet
a little sword.
Had little rollers.
Yes.
In the bottom of his feet, so
they were magnetic,
sort of
weren't they?
On the ground.
Weren't they magnetic too?
I don't know if his were. I know that like Baron Karza and Prince, I don't remember what the Prince guy in white, their joints all socketed with magnet balls, and they had the horse, and you can make them like into a centaur if you wanted to, and yeah.
And you could take parts from Karza and put them on the Admiral and stuff like that. That was great stuff. And then from there, we used to take G.I. Joes and blow them up. I remember, heavily. You look back on that and like the amount of explosives we used as kids, and how we were able to access that much gunpowder is still a little bit surprising.
I mean, we did used to go to Chinatown during Chinese New Year and always came back with a bunch of firecrackers. And you could go buy smokeless powder for reloading bullets, basically, if you wanted to. And that was like how we were able to make stuff so that we could do our stop motions with our G.I. Joes. Or I remember we built a model plane and put it on a string, and it went across my backyard in San Rafael, and we filmed that as it zipped down and blew up.
Yeah, we shot a bunch of bottle rockets at it, and
Yep.
then of course we discovered the M80. You know, and that our lives were never the same. I remember you blowing up a glass Alhambra 5-gallon jug.
Right, right. When they used to come as glass bottles, right?
Yeah, with the M80.
Yeah, we were destructive, shall we say, children. I'm glad we're not as much anymore. Put that into the robot arena. Let's just
exactly. Well, I'm trying to explain to the rest of the world how, a show that features, 200-pound robots destroying each other at, 400 miles per hour, how that where that came from, and what kind of thoughts that you would have going through your mind to even think that something like that would happen. In fact, you and I had a saying where we used to say, remember when we went to Marriott's Great America and we were walking around just going obnoxiousness.
Yep.
It's a way to piss people off. Piss them off.
Yep.
And we were so obnoxious and so annoying to everybody that was anywhere within our paths. I never had a better time. That was a great time. We would go to malls and we would put slinkies on the escalator. We would, and throw a bubble, like frothing bubble stuff into the fountains.
There's a word that keeps coming into my head to describe us, and I think that word would be assholes. I think that's what we were.
Yes, bored. And remember,
teenagers.
Remember in Terra Linda when you used to live out there, and there was that house that we found, abandoned.
I know,
out
the abandoned house that we just tore apart the drywall with the croquet mallet. Yeah, I know, because it was just covered in graffiti, and there were plants growing inside, and we just tore into that thing. Because it was like,
and I found the jar of mayonnaise. I found the old jar of rotten mayonnaise. Right. And we painted the entire wall with rotten mayonnaise. And that, even now, that's like 50 years later, I can still remember that smell. That was just like one of the worst. That was some wild ass times, man.
You think about how much that house is worth now.
Well, probably not that much, but at least the land. We weren't able to fuck up the land.
The land.
Yeah.
No, they probably knocked that thing down. Actually, we probably did the construction crew a service by helping them do demo. Except
the mayonnaise. That didn't serve anybody any good. So anyway.
Oh, that was horrible.
So you went to Redwood High School along with me, and you were a classmate of Gavin Newsom, Governor Gavin Newsom, and from there you went to ILM, right? Did you?
No.
USC.
No. I moved down to LA. I went 1 year to Santa Monica College, living with Owen.
Where you found out about the Forbidden Zone. Where you told us about the Forbidden Zone, which is now one of the biggest cult classic movies that's ever existed in all time. I mean, you don't know how many times I've seen that or told people about the Forbidden Zone.
Because my sculpture class, one of my classmates, and I didn't really realize it until after I'd taken the class, was Marie Elfman, who is the French girl in the show. Yeah. Crazy.
Right. She had told you about it, and then they filmed the Forbidden Zone at Santa Monica Junior College, I think. Part of it.
No, they maybe some of it, but most of it I think was done somewhere in Venice, or some little teeny soundstage hidden somewhere in LA.
For like $4,000. Yeah, it was like
probably about
lowest budget movies you could ever have, and it still endears itself to so many. If folks that you're watching
phenomenal
Forbidden Zone, you want to see it because it's the most offensive movie ever made, just about.
No, I think there's other more offensive movies, but
I know this one tries to be as offensive as it can be to everybody in the world. So, and if you want to see the Elfman family project as it was, because David Elfman is the one that did all the writing of it, I think.
So Richard Elfman wrote and directed it. Danny from Oingo Boingo was Satan. and did
And all the
music.
music. Yes.
He with what at that point in time when they made that film, they were the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo, and they were more of a crazy theater troupe than they were a band. And then eventually they became Oingo Boingo and put out Only a Lad, and that was it. You know,
Right.
and then they became what they became.
Do you ever think Danny Elfman would be the most played producer of music in our lifetime? I mean,
never would have thought. I mean, Oingo was such a big deal to me back then. Like, it got me through college and everything. Like, it was such a part of my life. And when they broke up, it was devastating in '95. And he was already making soundtracks. But man, who would have thought that he would be one of the most prolific soundtrack artists of all time?
And if you add up how often the Simpsons theme has played, it's probably the most played song in history. If you the most play, you know, other than like maybe Happy Birthday. I mean, I can't think of
right.
What other song gets played like 4 times a night across the United States every night for the last 30 years, right? You know what I mean? So,
cha-ching,
yeah,
residuals, cha-ching.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, yeah, you went to USC. You went to film school at USC then, and then I remember those.
I went to art school.
Okay, to art school. Okay, and then from there,
I didn't have the grades to get into the film school, so I went to the art school and then worked on everybody's film project, and it was way better choice. It was the right thing to do because I learned so much more of what I wanted to do for special effects in the art school than I would have in the film school. So it was the right choice, sure.
And then from there, okay, what was your first project that you worked on?
There was like the very first thing was my art direction teacher at USC hired me to work with him on building some models for a video game that was so bad. It was a filmed game that had like flashing dots that were put over the top of the stuff on the video, and you had a gun that you pointed and it registered the reflectiveness from the television on the box. So like it was a videotape that you just put in and it played, and all you did was shoot it and you got scored points. So like there was no interactivity really whatsoever, but we made a sub and a bunch of spaceships and weird things. So that was like my very first industry-based job. But the first film was Mark Satrakian called me up and said, I need some help. I'm the lead mechanic on the Blob. Can you come in? I'm working 100-hour weeks right now. Can you just come in on the weekends? And I was going in on the weekends, doing everything I could to help him out in any way and learning as I went. My semester was ending. I come in and say, Mark, I just finished my semester. I'm free for the summer. He throws me into he has a Mustang Mach 1 that the passenger seat was removed so he had room for his keyboards to fit. And so I'm sitting in the back seat with this giant leg room, and he drives me out to a place called Dream Quest, which was the effects studio that was shooting all the Blob effects. We get out there, he hands me a set of Allen keys and goes, you're the on-set mechanic. I've got to go back to the shop. And he turns around and leaves and just threw me into the fire.
Wow.
And that was it.
Wow.
Which was actually perfect. It was the right, like, you know, I just had to step up and do whatever I could do and show that I can make special effects. So that was it.
Wow. Okay. And then from there, now you and I were there from the start of Battlebots, which was Robot Wars. You know, it was
originally there was Robot Wars in 1994 was the first, and that went all the way to 98. And then it couldn't happen in 98. We had this giant, like, bunch of builders all got together in a big room and said, what are we going to do? We can't have this thing. And then Greg and Trey are thinking about something off to the side.
Greg Munson and Trey Roski. Greg Munson and Trey Roski. Yep. We can call them Greg and Trey because we've known them our entire lives. Right. The rest of the world has no idea what we're talking about.
So Mark Thorpe, who was the creator of Robot Wars, is going through bankruptcy court due to conflicts with Mentorn and Profile Records, which was this lawsuit that he was having over the creativity and ownership of Robot Wars, and the reason why it couldn't continue. And so I came up, and a bunch of other builders all went to, I think it was in Santa Rosa or Petaluma, that we went to go see this bankruptcy hearing. And afterwards, we went to Trey's house in Petaluma. And there we are, sort of all sitting around drinking beer, giant Weimaraners, like I think he had 5. They're like laying across you, and Greg and Trey sort of look at me and go, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this thing. We're going to have our own event. We're going to call it Battlebots. What do you think?" It's like, "I'll build you a robot. I'm going to build a robot for that. Let's build a robot." And so everybody was there, was like, "We're going to completely support you." And then in '99, we had Long Beach, which was the very first Robot Wars. Or sorry, Battlebots, very first Battlebots.
Right, I was there. I was there at that. I remember I was in the audience. I drove down so I could go see the Long Beach one, which I think may still be going on in some ways, because I remember that thing ran like 8 or 9 hours longer than it should have because of technical difficulties.
Yeah, well,
but it was still so much fun.
First time.
A lot of people don't even realize that a lot of the Robot Wars stuff started with you and Greg and Trey, all like,
and Satrakian, more of anybody,
and Mark Satrakian, all putting like saw blades and drills on top of radio controlled cars in Greg's parents' cul-de-sac in Tiburon, and just driving those around and just having them hit each other. That's what I remember as the very first Robot Wars, was just having, remote controlled cars just running into each other.
Run into it, yeah. Also, I remember there was a point while I think I was still at USC, and Mark was working at Rick Baker's shop on Gremlins 2. And he and I had a Tamiya Clodbuster, and he had a Kyosho Bruiser or something. I don't remember what it was. And we were taking these trucks, and we were modding them. Like, I put a turd on there and Estes rockets on the back. He was adding a flamethrower. I had a plunger-based bumper that when it made contact with a micro switch, it fired little squibs in the front and blew out an explosive charge off the front of the bumper. And we were going to basically wear like umpire outfits, go out to the desert and fight these things. And like 6 months into while we were doing that, Mark Thorpe calls up Satrakian and says, "Hey, I'm going to do this thing called Robot Wars." And Mark builds the master. So like we were already proto doing Robot Wars and Battlebots before it ever started. We had, more influenced by the Road Warrior and Mad Max, but
yeah, no, that kind of was that same era. Was Road Warrior came out,
early '90s.
We all were like really amped about the idea of stuff blowing up on a bigger scale than just GI Joes with those CO2 cartridges that we'd empty out and fill with gunpowder and push those down the street and watch those blow up. So yeah, it starts with that, and then it works its way forward. So and you've been with BattleBots since the very beginning. That's you've seen it evolve in so many fashions. First of all, the first one was Comedy Central, the first big after the pay-per-view.
Yeah. We had a pay-per-view in Vegas, and then Comedy Central picked us up, and we did the first real show at Fort Mason.
Right. And then you guys did Treasure Island.
We did Vegas again, and then we came back and did Treasure Island for 3 seasons, I think. So we did a total of 5 seasons on Comedy Central. Right.
And I was at the Vegas one as a judge, and then I did the two first seasons.
Treasure Islands.
Yeah, at Treasure Island. So that's how I got involved in BattleBots, and I was with the Sklar brothers and
Filter Wire.
Tracy Bingham.
Oh, yes, that's right. Donna
Tracy was
D'Erico,
really
Tracy
nice.
Bingham. Tracy was great. And Carmen Electra.
Yeah, Carmen Electra was like the big, I think, the gauntlet being thrown down of when you guys, you know, had to. Comedy Central had maybe made one too many requests to jokeify everything that was going on.
Yeah.
With Battlebots, they just never took it seriously. Obviously, because it was Comedy Central, but you know, I felt like they never treated you guys like it was a sport, and that was.
No. You know, it was a way for us to get on the air. And so that's why we had to do it. You know, and I mean, sure, I would have loved somebody else to have picked us up, but that was the right. I mean, think about it. We followed South Park. Like, we were right after South Park. What a great spot to be. So it worked out. In the end, I mean, yes, they made fun of us, and yeah, it was all a little too light and silly at times, but I think it was a really good starting point for the sport.
The South Park spot was both a blessing and a curse, because it was great. I mean, you were following their #1 show, but the bad part is I know there were some parents that wouldn't let their kids watch Battlebots.
South Park.
Yeah, they wouldn't let them watch South Park, and you know, they having it follow South Park. They didn't watch Comedy Central at all.
My authority.
Yeah. So it was something that was you know, and then the next thing was you guys were off for a little bit, and then you went back on to ABC, right?
Yeah, we had a long break where we did, like, there was BattleBots IQ, so there was the college level stuff, and then we did a single piece that was still kind of a weird mix of IQ and other stuff, and that went to that was supposed to be like ESPN and everything. That never, I don't remember what really happened with that. And then we, you know, some years again, then we got picked up by ABC, and that was a big deal. That got us back into the limelight. And that's when you know, Greg had said, do you want to build a robot? We're coming back and we're going to be on ABC. And I did a budget of what it would take for me to build a new robot. And I said, hey, what's the stipend for this? And he told me, and I was like, oh, that doesn't fit. My budget's here and the stipend's here. And what else can I do for you instead? Can I be a part of the show? And he was like, yeah, actually, you could be the technical advisor, because the people we're working with have never done robot combat, so they don't even know what's really going on. And you could be the guy in the room who knows what's happening. So I was in the control room, like where they're doing the camera A. Okay, I want camera B, camera A, camera C. Okay, give me that out of shot. You know, while they're calling all that, I'm in there right next to the guy who talks to Chris and Kenny, and I'm saying, hey, that white smoke, that's a lithium battery that's on fire. And then he'd whisper it, and then Kenny would go, look at the white smoke of the battery that's on fire. You know, so I was kind of there to give technical advice on how BattleBots is done, or how robots, what's going on in the arena when things are happening. So they actually knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, and well, a lot of people also don't know that you designed some robots in the earlier stages of BattleBots.
Right. I mean, I competed back in the whole Comedy Central days. That's when I was competing, and that's when I kind of gave that up and said, "Let me go and do, you know, be a part of the production instead."
By the way, Ronin, I still think is one of the great robots. I really love the design of Ronin. It didn't win a lot.
It's beautiful. It didn't win a lot. It definitely didn't win a lot, but it was beautiful. I got toys made. What else
still have
can
one.
I say?
I still have one, buried in one of the few things that survived that I managed to take with me that didn't get destroyed with the huge flood is your autographed Ronin robot that you gave me.
Nice.
So it's still a treasured piece of memorabilia. My son loves BattleBots, by the way. We sit there and we watch every week, and my brother and myself, my brother Owen, who is a referee for the original BattleBots show, and myself, we're all online, and we try to bet who's going to win. And if we all pick the same robot, then we say, is it going to be a squash match? Is it going to be a 1 to 2 minute knockout, or is it going to be a 2 to 3 minute knockout, or is it going to be a judge's decision? Whether the judge's decision is going to be unanimous or split decision. So we do that every week. And I will say the finale, I was terrible. I absolutely didn't pick anybody to win. I was awful.
I had picked on my bracket because everybody in the control room basically does a bracket before we start the 32. And I had Minotaur going the whole way.
I did too. I had Minotaur against Hydra.
Really close. I had Jameson up to like at least the top 8, but I didn't have him winning.
Yeah, no, I thought Hydra was going to go far. I thought Riptide was going to go far, and obviously I thought maybe we might see like Endgame or Ripperoni, make it all the way to the finals. The fact that it was a huge, it's spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it yet.
You better get out there and watch it because
exactly.
All known out there. Everybody
I feel we've hit the statute of limitations on this. If you haven't seen it by Sunday, then it's on you guys for not watching it.
Yeah.
And why weren't you watching when the show was on? Because it was a great season, and I really love where Battlebots has come. I mean, to watch from where it started and the Robot Wars stuff and even the radio controlled car stuff, to where it is now, it's an amazing thing to sit back and say, like, what if your friends invented basketball? Do you know what I mean? What if your friends invented football? What if your friends invented anything that becomes a phenomenon, a national, international phenomenon? When I look at the fact that you've got Brazilians and you've got people from England, you've got people from Germany, you got people from China, you got people from New Zealand, you've got people from Australia. Yep. It's just absolutely blows my mind how big and how universal the love of robot destruction really comes, which probably doesn't make robots feel very good, knowing that we all find it fun to watch them. And eventually, when AI starts running the world and wants revenge against humans,
they're going to come after me.
You guys are probably like top of the list. Guys are probably right there on the top of the list. But hopefully they go up to Trump first. But after that, we're probably next on the list. So tell me like your thoughts of this season's BattleBots and what you enjoyed and what things you thought were maybe a little bit tough to watch. I do like the new raised up like level that you have, the upper level that
upper deck.
Yeah, the deck that you added. I thought that was great.
Trey created that. There's been lots of that is a controversial topic for sure. People hate it. Some people love it. People hate the fact that it's reduced the playing field. The ability to drive by however many squares that takes up. But I think it isn't exactly the shape I would have envisioned. But I'm glad that there's something else in the arena, and it isn't just always a flat floor. But this season, things that I am completely fell in love and still in love with Ripperoni. Ripperoni just blew my mind. I've had long conversations with them about the design of the bot, what it took to make the bot, and Anna, the team captain, she should have my job. She is so much better on camera and is far more intelligent than I could ever be.
She reminds me of a young Lisa. She reminds me of when Lisa was younger and had, because remember when we first met Lisa, she was like 12, 13 years old.
She was a kid. She was a little kid. Yeah. I think she was even younger than that when I met her. I think she was like 10 when I met her at Robot Wars. So yeah, she
literally has spent a lifetime in BattleBots.
Yes.
Do you ever
and
think
in
that we would
robots.
ever
Yeah.
be alive? We'd be alive long enough to actually have somebody do something for a lifetime beneath us. You know, that's kind of hard to hard to believe, especially the teenage lives that we led, that we'd even make it this far into our 50s.
Exactly. That we even have 10 fingers is
Yes.
amazing.
Yes, and both eyes and
2 eyes.
Yeah, we never
10
shot our
fingers.
eyes out or anything like that. Absolutely.
Nope.
Absolutely. You know, and that's another thing that, even though this is a pro wrestling show, I find there's a lot of similarities between pro wrestling and BattleBots. You know, there's a lot of the showmanship that's there. Madison from Mad Catter, you know, and his interviews.
Mason, yeah.
Mason, yes. Mason's interviews. He is
I want to tell you, son. Yeah.
He's borrowed right out of like the WWE. He's like, actually, even from the older WWF stuff, you know, he gives the classic interview. In fact, yeah, I love that. I absolutely.
Randy the Macho Man.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were a fan of wrestling too back in the day, you know, back to the early days. You had your muscle collection.
Yeah, but those weren't really wrestling. The little muscle guys. I love the one with the 6 arms. Those are my favorite ones. But like the Road Warriors. Those 2 guys were my favorite. The tag team guy. They were 2 sort of, you know, I think they had their heads shaved and maybe they had mohawks, and they would, like, the music would start playing and they would just run down the ramp, dive onto the deck and just start wrestling. Like, there was no pomp and circumstance and walk down the thing. No, they were in it and they were in the ring and they were fighting like immediately.
Hawk had the mohawk going straight down the middle, and Animal had a reverse mohawk, so the 2 of them would match up and have one head of hair between the 2 of them. But yeah, the idea of the squash match, and where you just had somebody just come in there, just level somebody and just beat the hell out of them. I really feel like that's the sort of thing that BattleBots brings, you know, and that's why I love BattleBots so much, is that there's no real apologizing for beating somebody up. You know, if you
No, I mean, when you should never build a robot and go to BattleBots if you care so much about your robot you don't want it to get hurt. You should always be ready to walk out of the arena with a bucket and your robot in it in many parts. Like, that is sort of this sort of weird Buddhist acceptance of that you could be completely destroyed.
One small asterisk. That's one small asterisk, and that is anything Mark Satrakian puts in the ring. We don't want to tear that apart. We don't want those are works of art we all want to sit back and admire. In fact, I was going to bring up a Mark Satrakian story. Do you remember the pink submarine?
The pink submarine.
Yes. From Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. The Mark Satrakian is one of the great, you know, special effects geniuses of our time. First of all, he's unheralded because the guy will not take any publicity. He's just the most modest guy in the entire universe, and probably the smartest guy you'll ever meet anywhere. But he will never say that he's the smartest guy ever anywhere.
Nope.
He never puts on any air. But the guy, remember that one time he made a bat out of tissue paper and pipe cleaners that I thought was a real goddamn bat. And then he did another time where he made a fake finger of himself and in ceramics class, and then punctured it and made our drunk teacher think that he had to go to the hospital, and it was bleeding all over the place. It was incredible special effects. But one time, the big secret about Mark is that he's colorblind, right? That's what
mostly, yeah.
And people don't understand.
He's got a hard time with green red, yeah.
Yeah, and so he, I guess if it's a really sharp color, they all kind of blend into the same thing to him. No,
it's when it's really muted. So like a pink or a tan or a mauve, like those all turn into a gray. If it's like red light red, it's seeable. If it's green light green, you know, pure primaries he can totally see. But when it gets sort of muted, and you blend
and
like
that was
fuchsia.
that was the whole thing. Is that he brought this submarine to school, and it was pink, and we were like, "That's an." I said to him, "Oh, that's the submarine from Operation Petticoat." I said, "That's great." And he's like, "No, it's from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea." And he's like, "What are you telling me? It's pink?" And I was like, "I said it's a pink sub." And he's like, "I ran out of Battleship Gray, and I had 2 bottles of paint, and I didn't know which they were unlabeled. So I just used the one that I thought was gray because, as you said, it muted it out, right. So it all looked gray to him. So he paints the submarine, and it's this bright pink sub, and it just was hilarious. It was, and it's just amazing that Mark is able to like be so successful with a significant disability like that, in that sense that no one would ever know that he couldn't see those different colors. He's done mostly everything he does now is black and gray or whatever. So he doesn't probably have to do anything that's in pink these days. But
he reads the labels better now. So
yeah, he pays someone to do that for him now or something like that. But I always thought that was like a funny little story. But he is just an incredible genius. And then I know that you worked with him on Hellboy too, right?
I worked with him on Men in Black 2, on Hellboy 1, and a little bit on Hellboy 2. And we did a bunch of like television stuff together with robots. Like we did the Drew Carey show, needed some robots that we built for it. And what else did we do? I think that was it. We did 2 different Drew Carey shows, but we've done a bunch of stuff together.
Because I remember they were showing on TNT. They were showing the DVD version of Hellboy and Hellboy 2. And I don't know if you've seen it, but you're all over it. You and Mark Satrakian in the like director's cut where they like show the makings of stuff. You and Mark are all over it. And I was just had it on the TV, and I turned my head. I'm like, oh my God, there's Pete. There's Mark. Wow. Because this was before you guys had been doing all the heavy BattleBot stuff. And then there was also the Robot Fighting League, right? That you guys did?
Yeah, Mark did. I did very little on that. I was too busy working my day job. And Mark did that basically on his own. He's the lead concept as well as sort of engineer on that. And they came to him and said, we want to make a television show with walking, fighting robots. And so he basically made everything that it takes to make, without making like Boston Dynamics style walking robots. He said, if you want to do a television show, we need it to be dynamic and be able to be repeatable. And I'm just going to put poles in their back, and that way they can walk and they won't, walk out and fall down. I won't have to write 3 years worth of code to be able to get a robot to balance. Instead, I'll just do this, and it will drag this bar behind it, and it'll be like a tripod.
It's a little bit too bad that the Robot Fighting League didn't succeed. I can understand why it didn't. It was just a little bit too overly staged, to be a success. But do you think it's something that might get revisited somewhere in the future?
Maybe. When we start to get more people building larger bipedal robots, which is going to happen. Boston Dynamics has sort of opened the door for that.
I've seen the dog. I've seen I've seen their dog. I've seen the robotic dog that they have. Boston Dynamics.
Well, you should see their. You've probably seen their bipedal walker too, do all its little stunts and run around. It's pretty amazing. It started as being called Atlas. I don't remember what it's called now, but it's phenomenal. Like, it dances, it jogs, it jumps, it tumbles. It is so good. It's amazing. But eventually that technology is going to get down to more people, and somebody's going to go from, you can go buy a servo-based robot that's maybe yay tall, and go. There's this thing called Robo One, which they're Japanese robot wrestling. Basically, they're little servo-based little robot guys that walk and then push each other over. That will eventually expand to much larger robots. Eventually, not sure when, but at some point, we might see something like Robot Combat League, but without tethers and without stabilizing bars, but actually walking out there on their own.
And
that would be the best.
And well, do you think that that's going to be where Battlebots is headed? As far as the
I don't know. I mean, we'd have to make a lot of changes. Mark is pushing very hard to get more walkers, people building walkers, and he's built one. He built a 70-pound sort of prototype of what would be expanded on and as a test platform so that he can sort of learn all the programming and what he needs to do. There's a video of myself and Mark talking about it. Also, Team Scorpios did a really nice video of Mark in it because Mark brought it to the latest Battlebots to sort of inspire and influence other builders to want to then get into a walking version of Battlebots. And it's going to take a while, but eventually that's hopefully going to come about. It's just so much more complex, so many more motors, so many more speed controllers, so much more money.
A couple of things I wanted to ask you about. Why are drones so useless?
Because the amount of, to lift something and make something fly, you need to make it so light. It just doesn't have the mass and it doesn't have anything it can do. I mean, they can spit fire, but rarely is fire an actual destructive weapon because most of this stuff is sealed well enough that it's just a big wash. And there's, you're talking about 1/4-inch thick AR steel armor. It's not getting through that. So a little jet of flame being splashed down from above is all it does is sort of gets the other driver maybe a little freaked out. I can't see my robot inside the fireball, but it doesn't really do any damage. And it's not like you could land one of those on another robot and then drill in or something like it. No way. That's all magic thoughts.
Sure.
It's hard enough to get two robots to make contact with each other perfectly. To hit the same spot twice is really tough out there. So, I can't imagine.
And then the other thing that I'm disappointed in, to me personally, is the kill saws. I just think they were not much of a feature. They either miss a lot of times or they just don't come up when robots drive over the slats. Now, are they automatically done or are they done by people pressing buttons?
They are at the 2-minute mark into a match. It's in the round of 32 is when they start coming up. At the 2-minute mark, they will start coming up and they come up randomly. Because what used to happen back in the Comedy Central days is Pete Lampert, who used to run all of the weapons,
right? I remember,
was way more destructive, and he changed matches because he would bring up a saw or bring down a hammer, and it would change whatever direction the match was going in because he just wrecked the arena weapons. Then were so much more destructive than the robots were. And he would wreck a robot. And that kind of was unfair because it was like you're fighting 3 things. There was the 2 robots and then the arena. So and the arena always won. It's like going to Vegas and gambling.
Yeah.
The house always wins. So it got to a point, it was like, this is unfair. And we actually want to see 2 robots fight each other, not 2 robots fighting. And then the arena changed the fight. So
well, I think that's one of the huge differences between you and the British Robot Wars. The British Robot Wars, the arena is so powerful. They have those house bots, which suck.
They have the house bots that weigh twice the size, and they just come in and scoop up a bot and change. Yeah, you
have that pit in the middle. If you fall in the pit in the middle, it's over immediately. you know, and I
Right.
hate that. I think that what
Terminator
BattleBots
didn't cheat. Yeah.
yeah. What I really like about BattleBots is you really get the idea of what's better. You know, what's the better design. You know, it isn't a
Yeah.
fluke that that you fall. You know, because I've seen in Robot Wars, one robot dominate the other completely, and then because of bad driving, fall into the pit or one of the house bots,
And then it's over. Yeah.
and it's over. You're like, well, that didn't really answer the question. We want to know what the viewing audience wants to know. Is a hammer better than a saw? Is a drill better than a spinner? You know,
wedge. Right.
Yeah, wedge.
Yeah.
You know, we all want to know those fundamental questions. Does a flipper, beat the one with a saw? And that the innovate. I was going to say you probably really love how much innovation you see every show and how many new different bots you see entering into the arena, with just very different designs. Some of them are horrible. I mean, I got to just be really honest with you. I mean, I'm not trying to make any enemies, but some of the designs, like Horizon, I hate it. I just took one look at it and I said, that thing is not going to succeed, after and I didn't like Star Child either, because I thought that one, it was taking the huge concept but making a hammer saw that you have to be so accurate on to hit the other side. With the way Huge runs, I was like, that's just not going to, it's going to be so hard to get a critical hit on a robot. But Huge itself did tremendous this year. I was really amazed.
Yeah.
I've liked
Huge went all the way.
Yeah. No, well, almost all the way. I mean,
right.
the Saw Blaze
made it to the top, at least to fight the champion. Yeah.
But
a great way to be second.
As a bot designer, you must really love Saw Blaze, though. I mean, that's kind of the culmination of a lot.
I'm super happy with Jameson's evolution over the years. I've watched Saw Blaze from being just sort of a dustpan with a very simple like Makita on the end till what it is now is a devastating object that he can control and put somewhere. And it's really, I'm so happy for Jameson to have won this year. It was a really great thing to see Saw Blaze make it to the top.
He just needs to talk to the Mason about doing post-match interviews. Mason's got to give him a little coaching on
Nah.
He's so modest. He's so.
I know, and it's fine. I love the fact that we get to see each builder's sort of personality. Some are egotistical, some are not. Some are big characters, some are not. Some are just really smart people. And it's okay. I enjoy the fact that we're making rock stars out of robot builders. That part makes me ecstatic.
Well, it is great, and it's a great equalizer. I mean, you can have guys like the guy that runs Big Dill, who only has one working arm, compete on the same level as totally. Everybody else. That's really admirable. And that you can have, the Ripperoni, the girl from Ripperoni, who's not old enough to drive yet, or barely old enough to drive.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is.
Okay, but
older than 21.
Point. Okay, she's 21,
yeah.
But she's barely capable of getting a drink without getting carted. Let's put it that way. And still, she's able to compete on the same level as a Don Hudson and people have been there from the very beginning, and Ray Billings and all that stuff. In fact, Ray Billings has joined my Facebook group, so friends of mine. So I'll definitely post this on his wall when we're done with that. It was sad to see him out for this year, but he still made his presence felt with being there for Malice and and Bunny, and that was so what do you feel was like the biggest surprise for you in BattleBots this year? What was the biggest shocker for you?
Let's see.
Didn't mean to stump you there.
I think tantrum and blip not going as far as I expected.
That's
That
so
was sort
funny.
of a
That
big
is
shock.
exactly what I was going to say.
But they're, like Donald Hudson, you can't be the top champion every goddamn year. I mean, sure, you can go ahead and be Lewis Hamilton in F1, but even he finally got knocked off the podium, so it happens.
Black Dragon got knocked out. Black Dragon got knocked out after its incredible streak.
Riptide just tore through everybody. Riptide is a destructive, dangerous robot.
Do you think the loss of their driver due to COVID was a major reason why they lost, or do you just think that they just ran up against someone they couldn't beat?
They ran up. I think the thing I love about Robot Combat, and I mean I sort of said it years ago back in the old Robot Wars forum, which was originally, I said rock, paper, scissors, which was spinner, flipper, wedge. And you just have to find who can fight who, right? And one of the things that they weren't paying attention to was they went through all of those fights with that same egg beater. Well, guess what? It had showed its fatigue life. So it hit Copperhead, which is the smallest bot we have, yet it still weighs 250 pounds.
It's a compact, tough robot.
So they broke their spinner on something that was harder than them. So that it could have happened. If Ethan could have been driving, the same thing could have happened. I don't think I would not. Felix, who drove for Ethan, did a phenomenal job. He was a great driver and there should be no taking down from his skill. Ethan just having COVID was some shitty ass luck for Riptide, but they just met the robot that was better attuned to defeating Riptide. That, everybody's got a weakness. I mean, you saw Copperhead destroy Endgame.
Yes.
Nobody saw that.
I was amazed.
Right? Nobody's experienced that. So that, if that can happen, the same thing can happen to Riptide. It can happen to anyone. Every bot will have a weakness. Somebody will find your weakness.
Are we done with the full body spinner?
I don't think so. I think we'll still see a Gigabyte. We'll still see whether or not Brian comes back with Captain Shredderator or not. There's some other they're builders that have been building in smaller scales, going to a place called NHRL, which is Norwalk.
I've watched that. I've watched that too with my son.
They're thinking about building, a couple of teams are thinking about building big, and they're going to bring some of the design concepts they've done at Norwalk for full body spinner to Battlebots. And I think they're fully capable. I don't think it's done, but it's a tough one. You just have to choose how you're going to do it. It's not you can't just go out there and expect, well, they have to come hit me because I'm a giant weapon with no armor because I am the weapon, right? But somebody will find a way around it. Ray used to beat everybody up, but then people figured out, how do I destroy Tombstone? Or basically, how do I stop Tombstone from spinning was the key. So I think it's still viable. It's still a viable design. It just may need some iterations done to it.
What I always tell my son is it's nice if the robot looks cool, but what it really comes down to is, can it take a punch?
Yes.
You've got to build a robot that can. Everyone thinks about the offense of their robot and the coolest weapon that you can get. But maybe the best thing you can do for your robot when you're designing it is design it so it can take a punch, and that the more durable ones are the ones that last.
The championship is a perfect example of that. So Jameson welded on that whole weird front piece is an older, damaged version of his normal wedge, inverted and raised. And the whole reason for that was he wanted it to absorb the impacts. He knew he was going to take hits from huge. Let that just bend and tweak slow down Huge's weapon so he can get the one shot. And he did. He got that one hit, took out the weapon belts for one of the drives, because Huge's weapon is driven by 2 motors, basically halved the power to Huge's weapon. And that was it. That was how Sawblaze was going to win now, because Huge could no longer hit with that ferocity that it's been doing up to that point. I think it's beautiful use of, hey, let's make a piece of armor that is going to crumple and be destroyed. But in the process, we're going to stop them from spinning, and then I get to bring my weapon in and make an attack. That was genius on Jameson's part. Well thought out, well planned.
It's this constant physical chess game that goes on with BattleBots.
Yes.
The thing that I love about BattleBots is just thinking, especially if you go back to the really old, like early Comedy Central days of watching BattleBots. You just see it online and you see what it's evolved into. And yeah, there's still, some things like Lockjaw that haven't changed radically that much, although now he has the spinner on the front of it. But,
right.
There's some designs that have kind of lasted throughout. Biohazard is basically Hydra, moved into the modern era. But those designs are still there. I with you, I was really surprised about Blip also. I thought Blip was going to make a nice transition to this year. And same with Tantrum. Once you're the man, people start looking at, or lady, so to speak, or even like Witch Doctor. Once you get established and people know what kind of a bot
people are gunning for you.
Yeah, and they design stuff to purposely knock you out and to take advantage of whatever weaknesses you have. And in that sense, BattleBots is always going to be evolving, and it'll never be set.
That's been always my favorite part. I mean, that's, me, robot Darwinism was my tagline from all the way back in Robot Wars days. Adapt or be scrapped, right? So going back to BattleBots Comedy Central days, I remember we were in Treasure Island, and there was this bot called Final Destiny, which was Pyramid, and it had a giant helicopter blade, and it had springs on its weapon, on its armor shielding to hold it down towards the ground. And so it would drive out, and everybody just drove up their weapon into the giant spinning disc, right, and got destroyed. And I remember Donald watching that fight, going back to his pits and just working because he was going to fight them. And he goes and he welds basically a teeny spatula on the very end of Lockjaw, just right out of the very tip. And he drives out there. He comes out to them super slow. Like, he keeps waiting. And Final Destiny's just sort of like overconfident and cocky and just comes at him. And he gets his little teeny wedge underneath their armor, and he lifts, which brings their armor up into their own spinning blade. And then it just sucked it all up in there. And the whole robot goes flying in the air and parts are everywhere. And Donald won because he adapted and made adjustments on the fly right before his fight. And it was pure Donald being the amazing guy he is. And it was pure robot Darwinism. You saw things evolve in front of you. And I love that. That's like my favorite part of Robot Combat, is watching somebody run back and make a change in the pits just to counter somebody else's robot.
So now I know that the season's ended. So what do you do now that the season's over? What are you working on?
So there's still there's going to, at some point, the Golden Bolt will come out we shot all that. I'm not sure when they're going to air it.
I love those.
We only shoot for 2 weeks. So
I know.
I'm working for BattleBots. The rest of the time is me on the phone, me making text messages, me making Facebook commentating. I'm constantly doing all that part on the background, but I have my day job. I'm an engineer who went to art school, is what I kind of am, the company I work for. So
what projects are you working on now? What other?
The thing that's pretty big that we're working on at the moment, we have some greenhouse automation and sensor stuff that we're working on. But one of the bigger mechanical projects, and it's been ongoing for years, is the 10,000 year clock. My boss, Danny Hillis, he came up with this idea of making a clock that could run for 10,000 years without human intervention. Wow. And we are in the final stages of finishing off the timekeeping system, and then we'll be installing it in the mountain in Texas.
I've got my Casio.
No, not that.
I've got my Casio that I bought in 1990.
Casio G-Shock.
This thing still works, so you might want to tell him to try to borrow from some of the Casio G-Shock design.
If anybody's interested, longnow.org. You can go there and see about the 10,000 year clock.
Excellent.
And see what we've done.
Excellent. I just want you to know, Pete, that just to my right, I'm not going to put
all I can see is your.
I know it's got the green screen logo, but to my right, on the wall, is the Villains and Vigilantes cover. The Villains and Vigilantes that's signed by Jeff D. that you gave me. So it's framed and it's on my wall. So I look at it all the time. I look at it every day. I have a little reminder of you every day.
Well, that was so important to us.
Yes.
Jeff D. was such an influential artist on us, whether it was through D&D or when he was doing Villains and Vigilantes. Like, his artwork for role-playing just changed like everything I thought about for role-playing. Like, I was so into everything he did. And to be able to knowing when your 50th is coming up, and then I bought a copy, I contacted him, because I had done his Kickstarter. He'd done a Kickstarter which had, like, he was going to reprint some of those pieces of art that he did for some of the modules and some of the stuff that's in some of the big books. And I contacted him and said, hey, look, me and my friend grew up playing B&V forever. Loved your artwork. Can I get you to sign it? And he was like, totally, send it to me. So I sent him everything I could to send it and send it back, and he was totally cool about it. So I love the fact that, and knowing that you would completely appreciate it. It's like giving that kind of thing. I couldn't give it to anybody else. Like, nobody else would get it.
It's one of my most treasured pieces of art that I have on my wall. So just that you know, every day I look at it and I have a little souvenir from you and a reminder of our friendship over the years. And you've been just such a good friend over the years, Peter. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished and the things that you've done, and both you and Greg and the whole Battlebots community. It's a weird family. It's kind of like my wrestling family. They're just, you get together for like these intense events. You sleep and you breathe and you bleed together, and then you go through the incredible highs and lows. The immediate feeling that you feel like as soon as you're done is like, I never want to do this again as long as I live. And then like 24 hours later, you're like, when is it going to happen again? That's wrestling in a nutshell. That's Battlebots in a nutshell.
Totally.
I hope that if you guys are doing another show in Vegas again this year, I know it's not set or anything like that, but I'm hoping I can come out to Vegas to see you guys do another live show. It was great coming in person a few years ago when I saw you guys in LA. That was great.
Well,
too.
You should definitely contact Greg and Trey, because there is a live show, couple nights a week live show with only 5-6 fights that happen. And it's a set. We only have a few robots that were specifically designed for this live show. It's kind of like going to medieval times in a way, but Battlebots. I mean, the fights that happen are real. Like, they fight each other, and if one breaks, that's what happens. But it isn't like a tournament. And Bill Dwyer does the color commentating for it. So you should just go to Vegas just to see that. But going back to artwork, I want to show you something that a fan gave me. Oops,
wow.
Sorry, puppy. This was while we were shooting season 7. and I was no longer, because I'm not on, I was on the broadcast portion of the show for 5 and 6, and I'm no longer on the broadcast section. Now we're doing some YouTube stuff. But there was a fan in the audience, and he was holding up this. He had made this. And I had to run out and was like, oh my God, dude, I have to shake your hand. This is the greatest thing. I love this. They got some good camera footage of it. And I was like, can I pay you for this? How much money can I give you? And he was like, no, I'm just going to give it to you. I'm like, no, I want to give you money because you made this. And he was like, no, I'm not going to accept any money from you. And so he gave me this amazing piece of artwork that he made that like just, it's got my William Shatner hands and it's got everything.
That's amazing. So, that's amazing. You've been characterized. That means you've made it. You've been made into a piece of artwork. That is going full circle for you, man. That's really something. Well, can you believe it? Our hour is up. I can't believe that it was that quick. And there's so many other things I wanted to talk to you about that we didn't get to. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to have you expound on poo skates. And I
don't even remember what poo skates were, but we'll just that's another conversation.
The old Atari 800 days and all that other stuff. But we'll have you on again, especially when you're ready to promote the next show. And hopefully I can see you in person. Hopefully I'll get a chance to come down to LA with my kids and all that stuff and get a chance to see you. If our fans want to get a hold of you through social media, how can they get in touch with you?
I'm usually like any of the Twitters and the Facebooks. I've got all the at the Bot Whisperer. So that's usually all my stuff. That's the easiest way for anything BattleBots related. I just am the Bot Whisperer on all of those. And I've got a page on Facebook. I've got Twitter and Instagram. All of those. Greg and I when we were like, hey, we're going to make this character. Pete, you're going to be the Bot Whisperer. It's like, okay, what are we going to do? So Greg and I made the artwork together, and then we were like, crap, let's go onto social media and grab all of the handles that say the Bot Whisperer.
Good move. Pete, it is really, really great to talk to you again. And we spend too much time not talking to each other. We should find more time to hang out like this.
I need to get up to the Bay anyways and spend more time with people up there, as I haven't spent nearly enough time in the Bay Area in a while.
Well, this has to count. This has to count for a little bit here. And really appreciate having you on the show.
You should contact Greg. You, Owen, and Cameron should figure out a way that you guys could all go to see the live show in Vegas. Don't worry about tickets. That won't be a problem for you guys. But you should go see the show, and it would be great.
Yeah, but I want you there.
And if you're gonna go, I will make sure I go. We'll catch a Southwest and just go.
We'll make plans. Pete, it's great to have you on the show. I'll send you the link, and good night, everybody. But really great to have you here. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks. It was